Thanks to CuriosityStream for supporting this episode. Go to curiositystream.com/scishow to learn more. What do you think of when you imagine giant dunes of sand? Maybe like punishing heat, little water, and practically no life, basically a desert. But the northernmost parts of Alberta and Saskatchewan in Canada are not a desert. It's below freezing for half the year, and there's enough precipitation to sustain the world's 20th largest lake. And yet here, at a latitude of 59 degrees, lies the Athabasca Dunes. They're one of the world's northernmost dune fields and one of planet Earth's most unique habitats. Like much of North America, Athabasca sits on the Canadian Shield, a large expanse of nearly exposed bedrock. The shield formed during past periods of glaciation when huge sheets of ice covered what is now Canada and parts of the US. This ice basically scraped everything down to that bedrock. The dunes themselves date to the end of Earth's last glacial period, somewhere around 10,000 years ago. These ice sheets were mind-bogglingly thick. Comparable modern ice sheets like Greenland's can be 3 kilometers deep. And although we think of glaciers as just kind of sitting there, they're actually flowing like in slow motion. The material they scrape off, and by material I mean stuff like mountains, gets pulverized down to what's called till. As the planet warmed and the glaciers retreated north, much of that till was carried along for the ride. Think about how much water must have been produced by the melting of a kilometer-thick sheet of ice the size of Canada. Around 8,000 or 9,000 years ago, that flood dumped a deposit of till into a massive lake, and that lake receded, and it left behind what we now know as the Athabasca Dunes. And then the wind took over. As the ice sheet pulled back, cold air from the top rushed down and created powerful winds that blew in a southeasterly direction. This cold, dry air was key to slowing the growth of plants that otherwise would have stabilized the sand with their root systems. As the sand flew around, it didn't just pile up into nice, floofy mounds. Instead, it abraded any rock formations that somehow survived being crushed by the ice. This generated even more sand and broke it all down into smaller and smaller bits. Eventually, the climate warmed enough and the glaciers receded far enough that the winds shifted to a more northerly angle where they remain today. But by that point, there was already a lot of sand. Today, individual dunes can rise 30 meters high and stretch for up to 1.5 kilometers in length. For a region with such unusual geology, it might not surprise you to know that there's a bunch of interesting life, too. The presence of so much water has allowed for the development of an ecosystem that's pretty unlike what you would find in a desert. There are quite a few rare forms of life found here, and a concentration of specialist species not found anywhere else this far north. In fact, the Athabasca Dunes are home to 10 endemic species, which means that they are not found anywhere else on the planet. And none of them are giant sandworms, unfortunately. All 10 of these species are, in fact, plants, and they've evolved a number of adaptations to the unusual and shifting conditions of the dunes. Their outer protective layer, called the cuticle, is extra tough to withstand the constant abrasion of windborne sand. Many grow especially quickly to help avoid being buried under shifting dunes. And if that doesn't work, some grow rhizomes, which are secondary stems that sprout from the root system. Perhaps the rarest of these species is the Athabasca thrift. To avoid the dunes entirely, it makes its home on a compacted layer of pebbles and sand called gravel pavement. Another rare species is the large-headed woolly yarrow. This name sounds kind of ridiculous, but it refers to the hairs that covers its stem that help the yarrow retain precious moisture against the relentless wind. Another species, called Turner's willow, grows up to 4 meters tall to peak above the shifting sands. And if one of its thin, flexible branches does get buried, it can become the start of a root system for a new, cloned copy of the tree. Even its seeds are well adapted. Their lightweight and fine hairs help the wind carry them to new locations. Unlike a lot of unique environments, the Athabasca Dunes are actually pretty well protected. They fall largely within Saskatchewan's Athabasca Sand Dunes Provincial Park, which is accessible only by float plane. Of course, distance from civilization isn't much protection from climate change, but so far the populations of the dune's most important species seem stable. Let's keep our fingers crossed, because there aren't that many lakeside snow-capped dune fields out there. In fact, I think there's only one. And now we're going to take you from the freezing dunes of Canada to the more conventional hot ones of the Arabian Desert, where there lives another dune-adapted species, the sand cat. They are the world's only desert-dwelling cat, and they have just about the cutest cheeks we've ever seen, and you can learn about them in the CuriosityStream documentary Sand Cats, part of the series Small Cats Unknown. And once you're done learning about cats, CuriosityStream has over 2,400 other documentaries and nonfiction titles for you to enjoy, including exclusive originals. CuriosityStream is a subscription streaming service that's available worldwide, with content spanning science, nature, tech, lifestyle, and more. You can get unlimited access starting at just $2.99 a month, and for SciShow viewers, the first 31 days are completely free if you sign up at curiositystream.com/scishow and use the promo code SciShow during the sign-up process.